very dark days. Those were very big depression.
Height of the Depression, yeah.
And so my family was very happy that I was able to work. And it was summertime, and I was out of school, and they of course thought I'd come back and go to school. But Harry had other ideas, and so we decided that if I could go on with the band, of course, was paying for my sister's expenses as well, and that got to be very expensive. And so we decided that when Harry asked me to marry him, by the way, he was my first date. And so I just thought, I'd just like to say, would you like to go have a cherry Coke? And I said, sure, just like that.
Well, Harry landed a job in 1937 with Benny Goodman, and you were performing around New York City at the time, in Greenwich Village, I guess, wasn't it?
I was working with Bobby Hackett.
And Bobby Hackett. And John Hammond came and saw you at the club, is that right?
Well, almost. Almost. The way that really happened was Harry was working with Benny Pollock in Chicago. Okay. And your Mr. Spank, I'm sure he knew about that. Sure. And it was the Lincoln Gardens, I believe. And I was just doing club dates around Chicago. And one of Benny's brothers, heard Harry via air, and that's when Benny hired Harry. And of course, he left Benny Pollock to go with Benny Goodman to New York. And that's how we landed in New York.
Okay, so Harry was hired first by Benny before you came in onto the picture.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So he had no idea that you and Harry were married, though, correct?
You mean Benny?
Benny Goodman.
Yeah.
He didn't know that you were married.
At that time, no, because I was never around the band. I was usually doing club dates around town or something, and Benny was very much engaged in his own world, and so for some reason he didn't happen to know me. I didn't know him. I was not around the band very much because, as I said, I was working.
Well, he had a rule that the band members weren't allowed to date or socialize with the vocalist. Wasn't that right?
That's what I heard, because I think that was the primary reason that he let Martha Tilton go, because she married his manager, Raymond Vanderson. And I was not told that specifically by Benny, but the fact is that when he found out that I was married to Harry, it didn't seem to make any difference, because I was not involved. I think he rather liked that, because he didn't want his girl singers to get involved with his musician.
Sure, I understand that. And then were you you weren't involved with the Carnegie Hall concert in 1936
no.
with Benny? Okay. I didn't know whether you had or not. I'd also noted in my research that you and Harry were still working with Benny in New York and were making, what, $200 a week? What was it like to live on such a large salary compared to everyone else at the time?
Well, as a matter of fact, we were not working with Benny at the same time.
I see.
Only Harry was working with Benny. And but that was a lot of money to us. And we were able to have an apartment instead of a hotel.
Oh, wow. Yeah, especially in New York.
Uh-huh.
There'll be a change in the weather, change in the sea. Before long, there'll be a change in me. My walk will be different, my talk and my name. Ain't nothing about me gonna be the same. I'll change my way of living, boy, if that ain't enough. Why then I'll change the way I strut my stuff. Nobody wants you when you're old. There'll be a change in the weather, change in the the sea. Before long there'll be a change in me. My walk will be different, my talk and my name. Ain't nothing about me gonna be the same. I'll change my way of living, boy, if that ain't enough. Why then I'll change the way I strut my stuff. Nobody wants you when you're old and gray. There'll be some changes made today. There'll be some changes made. There'll be a change in the weather, change in the sea. Before long there's gonna be a change in me. My walk gonna be different, my talk and my name. Nothing about me gonna be the same. I'm gonna change my way of living, boy, if that ain't enough. Why then I'll change the way I strut my stuff, because nobody wants you when you're old and gray. There'll be some changes made today. There'll be some.
Well, in 1939, Harry James left Benny Goodman and started his own band. And he was playing at the Palomar, or the Paramount Theater in New York, I guess. And one day you were listening to the radio, and I guess you were listening to Harold Arden's radio show, or no? How did that go?
Well, almost, but not quite.
Okay.
The way that was happening, Harry had spoken to Benny about going out on his own, and Benny had agreed to finance us for him to get started. So there was a lot to be done about putting a band together. And as you mentioned, Harry was still working with Benny, but on the side he was trying to put his band together.
Okay.
In the meantime, if a club date came up, or a wedding, or some, a way for me to pick up an extra $1, I would do the club dates. And so this particular night that you're speaking about, I think, I've told this story before, but it's kind of interesting. In those days, as we mentioned, it was Depression days. So a lot of the guys only made maybe $25, $35 a week. You don't live in New York very well on
Not on that money, yeah.
Harry was making a lot more than that, but at the same time, he was trying to put his band together, and he was very busy with that. And at this, I was going to do a club date that particular night that you're referring to, I think. And Harry was just kind of, he was lying across the bed, actually, and kind of thinking about trying to figure out how to get stands for the band. And we had little radio speakers in our rooms in those days. And I heard this guy singing, and he was looking for a boy singer. At that time, I thought I'd be singing with the band, so I wasn't listening for girl singers.
Sure.
And so I heard this kid singing, and I just said, honey, you might want to get up and listen to this kid. He sounds like a good singer. And I went on to work. I didn't know for a long time, maybe several weeks, that he had gotten up, called a couple of the guys in the band, Claudia Bowen, one of the trumpet players, and they went over to New Jersey, and he had listened to the radio show and found out where it was coming from. And they went over to this club, the Rustic Cabin, and asked to see the singer. And the story that he told me about, they said, we don't have a singer, but we have singing waiters. It turned out that they called this boy over and found out who was doing that singing on that particular show, and signed him up that night.
And that was Frank Sinatra.
Turned out to be a pretty good singer, didn't he?
Frank Sinatra was one of the biggest show business attractions of the 20th century, with a career spanning a half-century. He developed from an idol of swooning, squealing teenage girls to a matchless entertainer for males and females of all ages. A nightclub performer, motion picture actor, top recording artist, TV star, leader of the Klan, and potent force in show business. The Voice did it all without a single acting or singing lesson. Early on, he played with Harry James and Tommy Dorsey. He patterned his singing style after Dorsey's trombone phrasing. He won nationwide acclaim with early recordings.
People will say we're in love. I got it now. That's wonderful. No. What's the next line? Keep moving. You're a hell of a target. What's the next line? Don't dance all night with me till the stars fade from above. They'll say it's all right with me. People will say we're in love.
It sure did. Now, I understand that they spent a couple of days trying to negotiate with Frank about whether or not he was going to change his name.
Absolutely. In those days, every professional singer tried to get a catchy name. I guess my maiden name was catchy enough because they didn't try to change my name. But Harry suggested to Frank that he change his name to Frankie Satin.
Frankie Satin.
And I was not there, but I was told that did not sit very well with Frank. And he said, you know, it's my name or none. And it turned out to be a very good name.
Good choice then. Well, Frank only stayed with Harry James for a short time before he joined Tommy Dorsey. I guess Frank's wife was pregnant at the time and he needed more money, or what was the story with that?
Well, as I recall, I don't believe Nancy was pregnant at that time. She did get pregnant a little bit later because we were pregnant at the same time with my oldest son, and she was pregnant with her cute daughter Nancy. I think it was just a matter of Harry was just beginning, and it was yet to be decided whether he was going to be a hit or not. And we were only paying him, I think we were paying him $75 a week. And when Darcy heard him, I think he ordered a check on what he was making, and I think he kicked it up to 100. I'm not sure about that figure, but he at least said he would pay him more. And so Frank decided to take that job, and Harry tore his contract up.
We're back again with Louise Tobin, and I want to thank her again for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today.
My pleasure, Spencer.
Thank you so much. And
how many people my age get interviewed by nice, young, good-looking men like you?
Listen.
Are you listening, Velma?
Louise, I wanted to pick up where we left off and start off with your coming back after you left the scene, the big band scene, so to speak, in the 40s. You were out of it for a while. In 1959 or somewhere in that time, you were attending a show in New Orleans, and Al Hurt sort of was responsible for rediscovering you, or how did that come about?
That's very interesting. I was out of the business because I was raising my two wonderful sons.
Good.
And so the boys had both graduated from high school and were going into college. And I was in Denton, that is where they graduated from high school. I took them back there from California when they were about 10 years old because we had some kidnapping issues out there that I got scared. So I decided to move back to Denton and raise my boys there. And I'm very glad. It's the only smart thing I ever did. And so anyway, I had a very dear friend that lived next door to me there, or behind me actually. And she called me one day and said, I'm going to New Orleans to hear this new great trumpet player called Al Hurt. Wouldn't you like to go? I said, I'd love to go. And so we made the plans and we went down to New Orleans, found out where he was playing, and it was crowded, very crowded, small club, very crowded, but it had kind of a long bar. And I said, let's go to the very back there, because neither one of us were drinking, so we just said we can get some Coke so we won't be in the way of the waiters and waitresses. And so we went to the very back, and we're sitting there sipping our Cokes and listening to this wonderful trumpet player, who was a great showman now. And this bartender kept coming back and looking at me kind of funny, and I thought it was because we weren't drinking. And so I said, you know, I don't think this bartender likes our sitting back here. And but she said, never mind, we're here. So he came back 2 or 3 times, and finally, he leaned over the bar and he said, is your name Louise Tobin? And I about fell away from the bar because
He recognized
he
it.
did. And I said, well, it is, yes. Why? And he said, I used to work where you worked many years ago. And he remembered me from many years before. And so, of course, he had to go tell Al that I was there. And so Al came back and asked me if I would sing a couple of tunes. I was terrified because I hadn't been singing. But anyway, I did. And he made it sound very good. Al made it sound wonderful. And somebody recorded it and sent me the tape. I sent the tape to my friend George Simon. I'm sure you know.
The author of the Big Bands.
Big Band book.
The Glenn Miller story and so on.
Very prolific jazz critic in New York and a wonderful man. And he had a very sweet, wonderful little wife, and we were very good friends. And so George called me and he said, I think you need to come into New York and sing. He said, I'm starting a record company and I'd like to record you. And I said, George, I haven't worked in so many years, I don't think I should do that. And he said, well, come on in and let's he said, I like this tape so much. And he said, let's try and just see if you want to sing. So I went into New York, and they were sweet enough to invite me to stay in their home, which I did. And so he set up a recording date, and was going to record me. In the meantime, I don't know exactly if George Wein contacted him or he George or whatever, but somehow or the other he said, and you're not only going to record, you're going to do the Newport Jazz Festival. And of course I said, George, no way am I going to do the Newport Jazz Festival. I just haven't sung. I just can't do that. And he said, I'll tell you what. He said, I'm putting on a little jazz festival up in Connecticut. And would you like to go up and just get your feet wet and see how you feel about singing? I said, absolutely, because I don't think I'm up to doing the Newport Jazz. And I said, who's playing it? And he said, Peanuts Hucko. I said, Peanuts Hucko, the hot tenor player? Because I had heard of him a lot, because he was always the hottest tenor player going in the days when I was working around New York. But I'd never met him, to my knowledge anyway. And so he said, wow, he said, you have been away a long time. He doesn't play tenor much anymore, but he's a fantastic clarinet player. Oh no, let me back up and say what brought that on. He said to me that Peanuts Hucko has the band, and I said, can he still play? And then that conversation followed in which he said he's a fantastic clarinet player.
Now you did sing at the Newport Jazz Festival, did you not?
Well, I went to do this little jazz festival in Connecticut for George, and when George called Peanuts and told him about me, he said, "Can she still sing?" But we did. It was a very successful festival, and I think that's how Ween got a hold of it.
Got it.
And then I was invited to sing at the Newport Jazz.
And that was in
62, I believe.
62.
I think it was 62, yeah.
Okay.
And I got a very nice write-up from a wonderful guy.
This is Inner Jazz, where music has found its way.